Introduction: Why Boundaries Matter and What This Book is Trying to Do. People usually think of boundaries as simple do's and don'ts, rules we tell others so they behave a certain way. This book begins by challenging that basic idea and offering a richer understanding. The author, Juliane Taylor Shore, explains that boundaries are not mainly about controlling others, they're about understanding and shaping our own inner experience so that we can show up in life with clarity, confidence, and compassion. She grounds her approach in what she calls neurobiology, the science of how the brain and nervous system work, because many of the struggles people have with boundaries come down to how our brains have learned to react to threat, connection, and safety. The title, Setting Boundaries That Stick, expresses a real problem. Many people try to assert limits, but find it hard to hold them when challenged, or they revert to old patterns of people-pleasing, anxiety, or reactivity. This book aims to help the reader move boundaries out of the realm of abstract rules and into lived, nervous system-supported reality. Boundaries that are sustainable because they are rooted in internal strength, not fear. Rather than giving simple rules like say no more often, the book explores how our brain shapes our experiences of safety, connection, and threat, and how we can work with our brain, not against it, to build boundaries that last. It blends science, reflective exercises, examples, and practical tools to help readers become more intentional with themselves and with others. What are boundaries really? Feeling safe inside first. A major idea of this book is that boundaries begin inside us, not with other people. When we think of boundary setting, usually the focus is on what another person should or shouldn't do. This can make boundaries feel external and dependent on others' behavior. Instead, Shore defines boundaries as primarily about our own actions and responses. In other words, boundaries are about what you do when certain situations arise, not about trying to force others to behave differently. Think of boundaries as a spectrum between being extremely rigid and extremely open. On one end, we shut ourselves off. We don't let others in or take in much from the world. On the other end, we let in everything, and everyone's emotions, opinions, and expectations become ours. Neither extreme is healthy. Healthy boundaries are flexible, strong enough to protect your inner world, and open enough to allow connection and empathy. What is healthy isn't a fixed set of rules. It depends on the person's inner experience, culture, history, and nervous system. Shore points out that many psychological definitions of health have been shaped by certain cultural norms. What feels safe or respectful to one person may feel really different to another, especially when factors like culture, identity, or past experiences are taken into account. This book invites you to find your own boundary sense from the inside, rather than adopt someone else's definition. At the heart of the book's approach is the idea of an integrated brain. This means a nervous system that can balance emotional reactions with thoughtful, intentional responses. When our brain is integrated, we feel safe enough to pause, notice what we are feeling, make a choice about how to act, and then act in ways that support our values and needs. If our brain is stuck in old patterns of fear or loss of control, boundaries are hard to sustain. By helping the reader understand how their nervous system works, the book gives boundary work a foundation in real brain-body processes. The inside-out model: internal boundaries before external boundaries. One of the key messages is that internal boundaries come first. These are the boundaries you set within yourself before you ever communicate them to others. Internal boundaries include how you relate to your own thoughts and emotions, how you create a sense of safety in your body, and how you allow yourself to pause between feeling and acting. The book outlines several kinds of internal boundaries. Psychological boundaries. These help you distinguish your own thoughts, feelings, and needs from those of others. They act like a filter that helps you decide what to take in and what to leave out. Containing boundaries, this is the internal pause between feeling and action. Instead of reacting impulsively because of fear, discomfort, or habit, you learn to create a moment of space where you can choose a response aligned with your values. Physical boundaries, these relate to your sense of safety in your own body and space. Learning to feel where your body ends and the world begins helps your nervous system sense that you are safe enough to interact with others without being overwhelmed. These internal tools support external boundary setting by helping you feel grounded, calm, and centered. If your internal world feels unclear or unsafe, setting limits with others feels threatening and difficult. By strengthening the internal groundwork, you prepare yourself to communicate boundaries from a place of confidence rather than fear. Neurobiology and Boundaries: How the Brain Shapes Your Reactions. A major contribution of this book is showing how neurobiology, the workings of the brain and nervous system, affects our ability to set and maintain boundaries. Rather than just offering willpower or motivational advice, Shore explains that boundaries are deeply connected to how our nervous system learned to respond to threat and safety. When you were younger, your brain learned patterns of threat and comfort depending on your early relationships and experiences. If your nervous system learned that saying no leads to rejection or danger, then boundary work triggers the same threat circuits again and again. Understanding this helps you see why boundaries feel so hard. Your nervous system is trying to protect you from threat, even if that threat is based on old patterns, not your current reality. The goal of the book is to help readers rewire their nervous system so that boundaries feel less like danger and more like self-protection and self-care. To do that, Shore encourages practices that strengthen the prefrontal areas of the brain, the parts involved in planning, choice, and perspective, while calming the reactive parts, those that respond automatically to fear or discomfort. This inside-out work helps reduce reactive patterns so you can pause, notice what is happening inside you, and choose how to respond instead of just reacting. One of the book's key exercises for this is developing a containing boundary, a mental pause between a feeling and an action. This pause isn't simply silence, it's an intentional grounding step that lets your brain regulate itself so that your next action reflects who you want to be. Self-compassion plays an important role here. When you bring kindness to your internal experience, acknowledging how hard it is, recognizing common human struggle, and offering yourself comfort, you actually activate calming chemicals in your brain that make it easier for you to slow down and make intentional choices. In contrast, harsh self-criticism activates threat responses and makes it harder to stick with new ways of being. The 6-step process: clarifying, planning, anticipating, and following through. The book introduces a 6-step process for setting boundaries that are sustainable and aligned with your needs. This is not a rigid formula, but a scaffold to help your nervous system organize how you respond to challenging situations. The steps guide you to think through your intentions, your actions, and how you will handle inevitable discomfort or pushback. The 6 steps are: find your big why. Before you set a boundary, clarify why it matters. What will protecting this limit do for your safety, dignity, or health? This step helps you connect boundary work to your deeper values. Define your action. Instead of focusing on what others should stop doing, focus on what you will do if your boundary is crossed. For example, if this happens, I will take a break, walk away, or pause the conversation. This keeps the boundary within your control. Anticipate others' responses. When you set a limit, especially with close people, there may be reactions of confusion, denial, guilt-inducing, or resistance. Imagining these reactions ahead of time helps you prepare emotionally and stay aligned with your boundary. Anticipate your own reactions. You might feel guilt, fear, discomfort, or second-guessing when you try to hold a boundary. Thinking through how you'll handle those internal reactions increases your chances of success. Self-soothing plan. Develop ways to calm your nervous system when boundary work feels threatening. This could be breathing, grounding gestures, or other soothing practices that help your brain stay regulated. Say it again and follow through. Boundaries rarely stick after one attempt. Repetition, consistency, and calm follow-through teach your nervous system and others that you mean what you say. These steps are meant to help you weave internal awareness and preparedness into your boundary work. By planning ahead for reactions from both others and yourself, you reduce the chance of being thrown off by discomfort or surprise. This planning is not about controlling others' behavior, but about strengthening your own capacity to act with intention and self-respect.